Hi there, I'm Zack.
And I'm Joe.
And you're watching or listening to Pint-Sized History, where we'll take you through the landmark events that have happened throughout the past and have shaped the modern world we live in. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Essentially, this podcast will walk us through, in a very simple way, what's happened in the past. Typically taking on the forms of wars, such as World War II. We'll look through the events, dissect them in a very, very amateur way, let's stress.
Yeah, let's clarify, we are not experts. We are not self-proclaimed experts in any way. We're literally just enthusiasts that absolutely fucking love history.
So how you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing great, mate. I've got a beer here.
Good.
I've got a Stella Artois, which I bought, and then I thought, I haven't said what the subject is, but it's in France. And so I thought, why have I bought a Belgian beer when I could have bought a French beer?
Yes.
But then I don't actually know what French beers there are.
Stella, perchance.
No, that's Belgium.
Possibly.
It says Belgium right there. Belgium. You see that? Big letters,
I do have
Belgium.
glasses for a good reason.
No, I don't know any French beers, but yeah, I've got this one, which is fine, and it tastes quite nice, so I'm excited.
Well, if we're equating beers to what we're about to talk about, I maybe got not so much of a desirable one. I've got the Birra Moretti, which is Italian, and we all know what side they fought on in the war, which is what we will be discussing very shortly.
Yeah, like Zach said, the premise of each episode is to essentially take out an event that we're going to discuss. One of us will research the event and the other person will be there to listen and talk notes and just chat shit about the actual stuff that happened, and we can just have a discussion about it. But the main thing is one person each episode will bring forward something to discuss, an event and all the stuff that happened around it. This first one we're doing, I've got the information for, which is why I've got this big pad and notes right here.
Don't show them the notes.
It's all right. They can see the notes. I don't remember.
It ruins all the magic.
I don't remember all of this off by heart. I don't know everything about D-Day. I don't. I've literally had to research it.
You're in safe hands.
I've literally had to research it over the last few weeks, and I haven't been doing it every day, I'll tell you. So, yeah, this is essentially the first one we're going to do, and I decided that I should research D-Day because it's such an interesting, important moment over the last 100 years, easily one of the most important moments, such a huge day, and obviously the 80th anniversary was recently, so it feels like a good time. People are talking about it, so it might be something that people might be interested in, and it is just really interesting. I mean, some of the stories I've got, which you'll hear over the next, over a little bit, is insane. Like, some of them I couldn't believe when I was researching.
It's got its own letter.
Scott, excuse me, what? It's got its own what now?
It's got its own letter.
It's got its own letter.
It's a day.
Right, it does. Well, actually, that's a funny thing
whole
you say.
letter.
That's a great. You know what a great way to start, Zach. Because the first thing I wanted to ask you was, why is it called D-Day?
So I will disclaim, I do know a good bit about history. Not as much as experts, but I've got a solid foundation. So I know it is Deliverance Day.
No, that's incorrect. That's actually completely incorrect. I'm glad that you've come in with such a huge, I know a lot actually, I'm just going to go straight. No, it's actually called D-Day because and to be fair, I wasn't certain on this. It's because in armed forces, American and British armed forces, D literally just stands for day. It's the first day of an operation.
No, it's not day.
It is.
It's not day.
Mate, check the notes, man. It is day.
It's not.
It is.
It's the D.
I'll prove it to you.
It's Deliverance.
I'll prove it to you. What do you think they call it in France?
Deliverance.
Le jour J, which means the J day.
That was.
Because jour, and it's a bad accent.
Excellent accent.
Jour is day in France. It's literally D-Day in France. It's the same. It's jour J because, jour in French and D-Day in English. It is literally just meaning day. That is the full... And it's just, day doesn't sound all right, so they just shorten it to D-Day.
I really do believe the D stands for something, though.
Yeah, day.
Deliverance.
Mate, I tell you what.
I'm going to chuck my... we'll take a little break.
This is the very first thing I brought here, and he's already calling me out and saying that can't be correct. Search it up. Search it up right now. I'm so excited for this.
Oh, shit.
Are you learning? Are you figuring it out now? Yeah, I know,
All
mate.
right.
Well, I mean, Zach, you just looked on your phone. What is it?
I would say inconclusive from my very, very brief search.
It's absolutely not inconclusive. It is D-Day because...
But there is a Deliverance Day in India. So
Sure. Well, I'm sure that might be a thing elsewhere, but it means absolutely fuck all here. D-Day is called Day. To be fair, I literally learned this for certain recently as well, so I don't blame you. I feel like what's quite important is that we talk about, we just give a very brief overview of D-Day itself and what it actually is. So obviously... and this isn't from any notes, you can jump in as well. Obviously, after the Nazis took over France, England was left on its own, and basically all of Europe, England was left on its own. And Churchill actually quite early on said to his generals that we have to always prepare, because at some point we are going to have to land in Germany and take back all of Europe, assuming
boy, did we.
And assuming when the Americans come in, which of course they did. Hello, it's Future Joe. When we did this the first time, when we were editing through it, we realised that we actually made a pretty amateur mistake and didn't actually explain what D-Day was very briefly at the beginning. Like we said we would. We were like, let's talk about the basics because people should know. And then
you got ahead of yourself, didn't you?
I was so excited to talk about everything. I just didn't actually explain it at all. So I'm going to quickly just explain this now, and Zach, you can help me as well. This is World War II we're talking about, and it is nearing the end of World War II, and it's essentially the moment that Britain and America re-enter the war.
And Canada.
And Canada, you're absolutely right. That's so true. I'm so sorry, Canada. But they essentially re-enter the war. Nothing has really happened apart from bombing runs on their side, and they finally decide to cross the Channel, the British Channel, in a huge armada of ships, and land on the beaches of Normandy. It was a huge moment, an incredibly important moment, and it pretty much spells towards the end of the war, especially on the western side. And that's all it was. It was essentially this big armada of ships, personnel, and men pushing towards Germany and through France, through Normandy.
The correct term is amphibious landing, but I'll let you off there on that one.
Yeah.
But it was 1944. Things are going bad for the Germans. And then here come the Allies to compound the problems.
Anyway, yep, that's it from us. So go back to the podcast and enjoy. Now, Eisenhower is the leader of all of this. Roosevelt, he's essentially the leader of the American army at this point in the war. And Roosevelt has given him personal command of Operation Overlord, which is D-Day.
How do you reckon Montgomery feels about that?
Well, I think Montgomery was the British general, who was our main one, was maybe a little bit annoyed, but then at the same time he got second. He was kind of the vice in charge, so he probably was like, all right, I'll take
He
that.
did have El Alamein as well.
He did, and he was also like, cocky as fuck. So each their own. Anyway, so Eisenhower's got this incredibly huge decision to make, right? Because there's only essentially a 3-day window in June, the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th, to pull this off, and this is, what his decision is could end up completely ruining him, ruining the lives of, thousands and thousands of soldiers, well, more, tens of thousands of soldiers, if it goes wrong. This could be catastrophic. And so he's taking in every piece of information he can. And this is what he said.
Can you give us your best impression?
I'm not. I don't have an impression of Ike Eisenhower.
I don't know what he sounds. I don't know where he's from. I think he's from the southern states.
Is he?
Do a generic one.
I'm not doing an accent for Eisenhower. I'm sorry.
At least a line.
If I'd listened to him speak at all, then I might attempt it.
Just
for a few seconds.
one generic.
But I honestly have no recollection of how Eisenhower sounds.
Am I going to have to beg?
Look, when you can do your best Stalin when we get to a Russian thing or somewhere else, all right? Yeah, all right, but no, listen.
I'm not the teacher today, Joe.
So this is what Eisenhower said, right? Now, it was postponed a day because he just got this. So, in fact, I'll say it exactly here. So, this is Eisenhower's words. Early in the morning on June 4th, I came from my camp about a mile from here, came to this room, which means the command room, and Captain Stagg, who was the chief meteorologist for the Allied forces, he made the presentations. That morning, the stars were out, it looked beautiful, and he gave us the worst report you ever saw. Landing would be impossible, so I just said, all right, we have to postpone. So we postponed for 24 hours. So immediately, imagine how stressful to postpone is, because you've got all these men psyched up. And you don't want to, they're ready for this, and you can't, what are they supposed to do?
Well, you see in Band of Brothers when they portray it, don't they?
Yeah.
'Cause they give you they're all geared up. They get the speech from Nixon, and he tells them, tonight's the night, or they don't know tonight's the night, but then they're all geared up, and then stand down.
Yeah, stand down. And imagine your thoughts, because it's already such a horrific thing being, as a paratrooper, being jumped into normally, and that would have only been like 6 hours beforehand. That was in the evening, they were told. So, or actually, when was it? It was at some point anyway. But the point being is that, they have not much time before they're supposed to jump, and suddenly they're being told that they can't. And that would be a horrific thing, because it's such a difficult mentality to prepare for. I mean, we can't imagine it. This thought of going into complete unknown territory, surrounded by enemies all around you and performing a job. Like, it's terrifying.
I think that's what I always kind of like struggle with like war. I always like, it's how do you like? I know I've consumed so much media and like video games and just content around war in general, and I just cannot imagine having the courage or just I mean maybe the. I don't know, it'd be insulting to say naivety or something to like actually put yourself in that position. I guess you're conscripted to believe into doing, right?
I don't think anyone that hasn't featured in wartime could, or some sort of conflict could compare. Like with civilians, like how would we be able to compare with the feelings that they would feel, that intense stress on your body and mind, where it's just anxiety 24/7, and an anxiety that's just so peaked because this is your life you're talking about.
I mean, I have panic attacks, so I imagine that's. I basically feel what they feel on a daily basis, but I'm not going to downplay them. It's just like it's monumental, and I just it just gives you so much of a sense of respect for what they did, and that they're able to actually do that. Like talking about just being able to even like envisage yourself being pinned down by like an artillery squad or something, and hearing the bangs all around you. Just the fear is just incredible.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You have to also understand the scale. Like, over 5,400 assault crafts were already at sea by the time he's decided to postpone. So there's 5,400 ships and, stuff around in the ocean and, docked nearby the British Isles already. And he said, no, we have to postpone for a day. And then there's 156,000 men on those crafts. So there's 156,000 men on ships, on the ocean, ready to go, and he's had to postpone it by a day, and they're now just waiting on the ship for an extra day with nothing to do. That's and you're swaying, and there's the waves are super rough because that's why they've cancelled, and it's just, you have nothing to do except fret. And you just think about how awful a situation that would be, and how difficult a decision it is to then say, are we going to go through with this or not? Remember, the window's only 3 days, the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. 5th's now cancelled, so on to the 6th. Shall I read the second thing Eisenhower says? Because this is pretty nuts. This is after they've cancelled, and they've now got a few more hours to decide if they go for the next day afterwards. So he asked around the room for their opinions. There's no outright consensus. None of them particularly say if they, it's quite.
He's Big Daddy Dwight.
No one.
What's he to ask?
I'm not making that decision on my own.
Stand down.
I'm not making that decision on my own. That's terrifying.
You'll follow my orders.
Anyway, so
your blouse.
So there's no there's no outright consensus. He asked Montgomery, "Do you see any reason not to go Tuesday?" Monty gave his answer, "I would say go." That evening, as General Eisenhower sat alone in his personal trailer, one of the 20th century's most consequential decisions tormented the Supreme Commander. That's this. Well, I've got.
You love that, don't you? Montgomery, hard as nails.
I know. How class is that from Monty?
It's a little bit of fucking weather.
That is kind of Monty to a T.
A little bit of rain. Nothing we're not used to in these lovely British Isles. Let's go.
That's Britain, isn't it? That is so Monty.
Well, he's just been in North Africa, so it's like a dream to him, isn't it?
Yeah, he loves a bit of rain. So final approval would come after he was able to sleep for a few hours. So he has to make the decision in the early morning of June the 5th. So whatever, final approval. So he's able to just basically rest. So Eisenhower just goes off on his own and just chills.
Little nap.
Well, he might have napped. Honestly, I feel like I might have napped in that spot. You need just to get a few power hours.
A few Z's.
Well, yeah, we just think like, oh, I'm stressed. I'm going to bed. It's tiring. It's night time.
Wash your hands of it.
He needs.
This can wait.
He'll tell his person like, wake me up at 3. So he's got, it's not he knows that he's all right for a few hours.
He strikes me as the type of guy who's the modern equivalent of up at 4 a.m. Gym at 4:30.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg.
That's what Mark Wahlberg does.
Yeah, he does. He gets up at that's what his routine was years ago. He got up at like 3 a.m. and worked out for 2 hours.
That's insane.
And ate some crazy meal before he started his day.
Did you live like that?
No, of course not. But clearly in this moment, Dwight did.
Dwight needed it.
And so at 3:30 he got up and he returned again to that room. And this is what Eisenhower now says. And this is considering this is a huge moment because this is a like monumental time. I sat silently just reviewing these things, maybe I'd say 35 or 45 seconds. Now, it's been reported by some of the people present, for example, my own chief of staff, says that it was for 5 minutes. I know it wasn't, but 5 minutes under such conditions sounds like a year. I actually think after 30, 45 seconds, something like that, I just got up and I said, okay, we'll go. And the room was emptied in 2 seconds. Well, of course, that's the most terrible time for a senior commander. He'd done all he can do, all the planning, and matter of fact, there's very little more any commander above division command can do once you get started. And then finally, along about 6 in the evening, I went over to the field from which the airborne, the American airborne, started out, and there was a very fine experience. They were getting ready in all camouflage and their faces blackened and all this. And there they saw me, and of course they recognized me, and they said, quit worrying, General. We'll take care of this thing for you. And
It's so American, isn't it?
It is, and that kind of feeling was a good feeling. As they started off, I watched them out of sight.
They love a fight.
I mean, but
They love a fight.
but mate, imagine being the person that makes the call to do that, and you're like, oh my god, have I just fucked things up massively? Have I fucked things up? And you go out because there's no one with you. There's no one to say, good job, good call. I think you made the right choice. They've all pissed off. So he's just there on his own, and then he goes, what do I do? So he walks out and he sees some just random troops, and they go, hey, we got this. Hey, we got this.
What do you think? Do you reckon you're thinking like, oh god, what have I done? Or do you think like, this is good? This is like this is a comforting experience.
No, I think you're doubting every second.
Specifically after that guy says that.
Oh, I think you're still doubting, but I think he probably feels a little bit better. He's like,
Nice.
well, that guy's got it.
They're good.
This guy can take it all himself. I don't need to worry.
Send him
now.
straight to Hitler.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get him on a plane. Let's airdrop him over Berlin. No point having him here. He's sick. What a crack shot he must be. Let's bring him into Berlin.
We're up to be Rambo.
I mean, wow. How insane is that? Like, to think about like how close a call it was for him to just go, actually, you know what? Let's wait, because it would have been weeks. If they didn't choose those 3 days, then it probably would have been July. That extra month, you suddenly got to keep everyone in tandem, got to build the morality up. Like all these soldiers that were pumped to fight and now completely downbeat, you've got to bring them back up.
Every day you waste as well, I'd imagine it probably translates to more defences on the beaches, more time you have to decode and encrypt your the secretive messages you're sending.
Yeah.
All the more time the Nazi war machine can be plugging along, trying to anticipate the movements, and then, more casualties.
What I found interesting, though, which I learned, was that he even wrote a letter on the night of June 5th, just before it starts, a letter preparing in case the battle failed. Essentially just a letter. So
Sorry.
He wrote, my decision to attack at this time and place was based on the best information available. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone. I mean, A...
Imagine a politician saying that these days.
Fair play. But B... Fucking hell, man. That's dog. Mate, imagine the stress of that moment. You're thinking, this could balls up so hard, I need to write an apology letter right now, preemptively. Remember, I said earlier, 5,600? Is that correct? 5,400 ships, or assault craft, I guess, not just ships, on the water at that point. This is the kind of scale that we're talking about. This is from R.N. Coventry, which is an officer on one of the British cruisers on D-Day. He sent this letter to his dad in Chippenham. And he said...
Where is that?
I think it's near Bristol. No, I know it's roughly. I can remember the city. It's like towards Wales.
I'll let you cook.
No, cheers. Chippenham. Let's just someone fact check that. No, that's correct. It's kind of near Bristol, I think, or near Swindon, around that area. But towards Wales. Anyway, so he sent this letter to his dad. We went up. I was about to do an accent.
Wait,
hey.
We did Bristol.
Yeah, I know.
We did Bristol.
What's Bristol? It's like.
All right, we're in Bristol.
Oh man, I can't do it.
We're from Chippenham.
Give me like a Scouse or something. I'm not doing a Bristol.
Just do Scouse.
Anyway, we went up the channel on the morning the invasion began, and it's a sight I shall never forget. There appeared to be a solid bridge of ships of all types, shapes, and sizes reaching from England to France. So much so that one had the feeling you could almost walk across by stepping from one to the other. Of course, as you know, we don't, his dad knows, I love all ships, especially small ones, and I could hardly be torn away from looking at them. There was what I called the Hen and Chickens, a boat about the size of a trawler, followed by 6 or 8 small motorboats, all in perfect station, which only needed Walt Disney to give them eyes and an expression. Honestly,
Walt
though,
Disney?
yeah,
Was Walt Disney alive then?
yeah, well, yeah.
Was
Disney. The first big Disney films, I think, came out in the 1930s.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was the 50s.
Yeah, Snow White's 30s, 100%.
Really?
Mate, I'm onto a question part now. Where do you think every leader was during D-Day?
I know some of them, I think. I think I
Okay,
know.
so
Hitler was at...
Whoa, 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 whoa! Okay, shall we start with Churchill?
I'm going to go for Whitehall.
Where's
Downing
Whitehall?
Street.
Oh. Ooh. Okay, so funnily enough, you have got that one right.
Come on.
But that's not because Churchill wanted it.
No?
Because, so Churchill had initially planned to land in Normandy on the day.
Oh.
He was really adamantly that he wanted
For
to.
all his problems, he's a stand-up guy.
No, well, look.
I'm sure history would not prove me
Let's
wrong
not-
to suggest
let's
that
not-
he's a great guy.
I'm not in the mood to start. Is Churchill good chat? But I will say,
great wartime leader.
yeah, he is. He
person aside.
he was exactly what Britain needed for that time.
Yes.
In the war.
Not
But
that-
more
not
important,
that
let's just
pesky
skirt past that stuff and get to the juicy stuff, which was that he wanted to land in Normandy on the day because it's Churchill. And he's like, oh, get me on there. I want to piss about and show that I'm sick and all this stuff. He wanted to, show to his troops that, hey, Churchill's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they said that's fucking ridiculous. By the first day there will quite easily be snipers nearby. I mean, there were snipers weeks afterwards that they had to be very careful about. Yeah, it's really dangerous for anyone to come in the first few days.
When you think about the wartime leaders like Patton, who's the American general, and who's the other one? One more American general.
Omar Bradley.
Patton and Bradley. When I ever think of that, I always think of them literally on the first tank of a spearhead. Like I get the impression of them out the hull of it with their hand raised, like, come on. They're actually a couple of days behind in like some nice little office somewhere.
I'm afraid they weren't. That is absolutely not the case. But because that's another thing I'm going to come to as well. Who was there on that first day? Because you're absolutely right. You do get this impression that they would all be down there straight away, but in fact they weren't because it was super dangerous. Like it took hours for them to establish anything. Like they are not in a position to just start bringing out their biggest people. So Churchill came, I think, 6 days afterwards, and the only reason he didn't land on the day was because eventually the King George VI, said, "Well, I tell you what, Churchill." He kept saying, "You can't do this," and Churchill was like, "No, I'm doing it.
I'm going to do it.
I'm doing it." And he was finally like, "Winston, if you go on that beach on that day, I'm coming with you." Seriously, he said it. He was like, "Fuck it, if you're going, I'm going." And Judge was like,
Go on then.
and Judge was like, "Oh, don't." And he's like, "No, I'm doing it. Come on then. When we going?" And Judge was like, "All right, fine, I won't go." So instead, he was in Parliament, and apparently he said, I think he didn't do much, or at least we didn't see much.
As in my experience as a parliamentarian staffer, I would know what would happen. An urgent question, probably, in the Commons. They put some sort of ministerial statement.
Well, pretty much exactly that. He made 2 small statements in the House of Commons. So,
Small being half an hour long, probably.
Why? I mean, it said short, succinct. So yeah, maybe.
I don't know Churchill to be short and succinct when you think about everything.
But apparently you could tell going up to D-Day itself, he became incredibly nervous and
drinking a bit more than usual.
Yeah, well, I imagine, and sleeping less, and he didn't sleep at all.
Hitler was definitely a Wolfslayer, which is like that retreat he has in Austria.
Burgess Garden.
Burgess Garden.
Burgess Garden.
Is that the same as Wolfslayer?
Yes. It's the Eagle's Nest.
Eagle's Nest. Wolf. Yeah, they love that imagery, don't they? The
great
animalistic
name.
imagery.
You're right. So he was asleep in his retreat in Bavaria, right?
Yes.
Was it Austria where the place is?
I think it was Austria.
But so he's asleep.
Or Bavaria.
In this area, nowhere near any of it. Now, this is really interesting because Hitler had... So we said earlier how panzer divisions, the tank divisions, are so important. You need them, and you need them to be working hard.
I know this. He put 2 under his own personal command.
Right.
And said they can only move if he said they could.
Yeah.
And the other he gave to Rommel.
Well, there's more than 3, but yeah.
But there are 3, 4?
Well, there's a few more, which I'm going to get to, but yeah, keep going. Any more?
That's what I got.
That's what you got? Well, but you're right. That is exactly what it was. He had 2 armoured tank divisions, important tank divisions, that he controlled himself. When the invasion started, it was crucial to get those panzers into the fighting as soon as possible. However,
Germany's finest asset.
he was the only one who could deploy them. Now, The fighting started at 6 a.m. And in fact, the airborne troops landed in the middle of the night. So the first signs that things are going wrong happened at like 3 a.m. Hitler's asleep. Now, I don't know if you know anything about dictators, Zach, but they can be pretty horrible people that everyone around them... Yeah, I know. They can be pretty horrible to the point where not just everyone's scared of them, but even the people that work for them are scared for them. So the Führer has given explicit instructions not to wake him from his slumber. So Hitler finally roused himself at 11 a.m. or noon roughly. And even then, when they finally told him the situation, he refused to immediately send reinforcements to Normandy, including those divisions, still blindly confident that the entire D-Day invasion was a diversionary tactic. He thought, that's the real one's happening in Calais or Norway. No way is this one.
So, Joe, what actually happened on beaches?
So, obviously, common knowledge, there were 5 beaches on Normandy.
Can I guess the beaches?
Yeah, go on, you can guess.
So, Omaha and Utah, and they are American.
Yeah, that's correct.
You have Juno and Sword, and they are English, Canadian. And the last one, I always forget the last one.
You're closer than you think. There's 3 British Canadian. And
Juno,
one is
Sword,
Canadian.
Gold. Juno, Sword, and Gold are all British Canadian, and the other 2, Omaha and Utah.
Yeah.
Which were the most brutal.
Actually, Utah was, in terms of casualties, the least, but Omaha was by far the most. 1,000 to 1,300 casualties for the British ones. Utah had about 600, so quieter. Omaha, which is the famous beach, that's the one where, well, I don't know if it's that one, but that's the one where Saving Private Ryan is known for, was 3,600 casualties.
Jesus.
So 3 times as much as the others, if not more than 3 times. You might already know this, but there's a German called Heinrich Sevelow. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong as well. He's just an orderly of an officer present at Omaha Beach that morning. They were just there that morning. An orderly is someone that just does the chores for an officer. He's not someone that usually fights.
Hey, we need those people.
Yeah, well, he's literally he's making the bedding and he's giving you a cup of tea. That's his normal job. He took control of an MG-42 in front of the command bunker, and he claims to have fired 13.5 thousand rounds of ammunition and a few hundred more from his own rifles. He fled to a nearby town and was captured the next day. Now, he was sent as a prisoner of war to Boston, and he returned to Germany a few years later, after the war was finished. Over 50 years later, he was interviewed about his experiences, and he also wrote a memoir about it, and he said that he reckoned he had killed or injured over 2,000 men that day, obviously, definitely at least over 1,000. He also said, "But I do not know how many men I shot. It was awful. Thinking about it makes me want to throw up." He's known, you can search this up, he's known as the Beast of Omaha, and he died.
Jesus.
And he died in 2006.
Just a random
orderly. A random orderly. He was probably thinking, assuming no one was going to invade, make a cup of tea for his boss.
He must have been on the gold standard machine gun point for that entire beach, right? He must have been overlooking land.
Well, I've seen a picture of that command bunker, and yeah, it's pretty open. So yeah, pretty brutal. Utah Beach, another American beach. Do you know much about Theodore Roosevelt Jr.?
I can't say I do.
Oh, mate, you're in for a treat with this one. This, right? He was the eldest son of President Teddy Roosevelt.
Really?
Yeah.
With that name?
Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt. I know. You're
Never
right.
put 2 and 2 together.
Shit, that was obvious, wasn't it? He's also the cousin of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who's the president right now. So he's the cousin of the current president of the United States. And he's also just like this insane. He did everything. He had a full life. Like he fought in World War I.
His dad was a bit of an adventurer himself, right?
Right. During D-Day, he served as a deputy commander in the 4th Infantry Division, right? Deploying at Utah Beach. Despite opposition from his commander, Roosevelt insisted on going ashore with his men. Remember, he's a high up person. This is not something normal.
No, he's
one of the top.
Listed officer, right?
Exactly.
The commissioned officer, that's what I mean.
Roosevelt insisted on going ashore with his men, making him the only general on D-Day to land by sea with the first wave of troops.
Jesus.
When he got ashore, he discovered that the tide had carried them out further south than their intended landing spot. By the way, he had a heart condition and arthritis, so he was armed only with a walking stick and his pistol. And apparently, he surveyed the exit routes and causeways from the beach, rallied his men, and ordered them to start the war from here, So he literally just said, "Gentlemen," with his walking
go.
cane, "we'll start the war from here." He was awarded the Medal of Honor, but before he could receive it, he died of a heart attack in France just 1 month later.
Ugh.
On the same day, Eisenhower decided to approve his promotion to Major General. Not only was he the only general in the first wave of troops on the beach, he was also the oldest man in the entire invasion force. He was 56 years old, and there's a statue of him in Saint-Mère-Église. You know the one?
Saint-Mère-Église.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Saint-Mère-Église. There's
Cool tune,
there's a statue of him there. I got that story. I've got a few books here. I got that story from D-Day Landings, a travel guide to Normandy's beaches and battlegrounds. I'm mentioning it because it would be wrong of me if I didn't. Alistair Mackenzie is my dad, and he wrote this. And I'm not being paid for this, and he hasn't asked me to do this. But I looked through this book, found some of these stories, and thought, I'm a bad son if I don't advertise my dad's book about
his partner, Marianne.
And it's not just dad, it's Marianne Evans as well, who they co-wrote it together, the partners. So round of applause to my dad. This came out a few weeks ago. You should go buy it. But that's where I got that story and a few more that I've talked about today. Now, there's a small chance this is just like a myth, but I want to believe it's true because I think it's just awesome, right? So, have you heard, now I really don't want to butcher this name up, have you heard of Yang Chongjiang? Well, of course.
Comes right off the tip of my mind, that does.
Born in 1920, he's an 18-year-old Korean living in Manchuria, which at this point has been occupied by Japan for several years. He was conscripted at 18 into the Imperial Japanese Army and sent to fight the Soviet Union in northern Manchuria. At the Battle of Khalkhin Gol, he's captured by the Russians and taken as a prisoner of war. He's sent to the Gulag, as you do, classic, captured by the Russians, sent to the Gulag. But when suddenly the USSR are desperate for as many troops as possible, Yang is sent to fight for the Soviets. In February 1943, Germany then win the Third Battle of Kharkov against the Soviets, and Yang, who's fighting in that battle, is captured by the Germans. So he's immediately... So he's immediately. I know what Yang.
This can't be true. I already think this is not true.
Well, there's a picture. There is a picture.
No. Doctored.
Look. Well, I mean, there is debate about if this is true or not, but I want to believe it's so hard because I think it's just so good. He's immediately drafted from a POW to a provisional soldier and has now joined his Third Army. In 1944, he is sent to guard northern France, specifically Cherbourg in Normandy. And
how coincidental.
June the 6th comes and suddenly he's fighting another army.
But let me guess, he is captured and then conscripted to fight for the Americans.
Yeah, you're about half right. So after fighting the Allies, British forces capture him. They take him to England, and he's an English POW there. And then he's finally sent to a prisoner camp in the USA where he remains until the war is over. Yang decides to stay in the United States, eventually becoming a citizen, and lives there for the rest of his life. He dies in Illinois in 1992. 1992.
What? I just can't. What's your survival rate got to be there? Like 0.01?
Well, yeah, but someone, if there's, millions of soldiers fighting, someone's got to have that story. Or I want to believe it anyway.
That's not a good barometer for the truth of this tale.
Oh, just let it be true, though. Let it be true.
I can't.
There's a movie about him. South Korean.
Of course.
There's a South Korean made a movie about the Yang and his journey.
Oh, dear.
So, have you heard of the story of the French resistance and the Das Reich division?
No.
You might have heard a little bit, so I'm sure you'll come in.
You might ring a bell.
Yeah. So this is a huge division. A huge division. Apparently there's 15,000 men and 209 tanks.
Jesus.
Yeah, 209 tanks. So a huge division.
Heavy tanks?
I imagine a mixture of all.
Got some Tigers.
It's 209, surely. And in fact, one thing is they're state of the art. Some of these tanks are state of the art. The most recent Panzers.
Tigers.
No, well, maybe Tigers. I think the most recent Panzers, but anyway. Hitler and the Nazis have got them stationed in South France, in a town called Montauban.
That sounded not French.
Montauban.
Are you sure that's a French town or is it an Italian town?
Montauban. I mean, it sounds about right. Anyway, so...
We call it Mont-Auban.
So we knew exactly where they were. Bletchley Park had figured it out. The reason they're there in South France is because that's on the limit of where we can bomb. So we can't attack this stationary tank unit because it's too far away. So this is something we have to just, That's why they're there.
Let them live.
So we realize these guys cannot get into the fight, or at least they can't get into it straight away. This is crucial to the operation, insanely crucial. So what do if they can't fly bombers over it?
Send in the resistance.
Yes, they send in the French resistance.
I heard him say the French resistance at the
like
start.
2 minutes ago. So they use basically the French resistance to delay the Wehrmacht as much as possible before they can reach Normandy.
How do they do that?
So, well, that's what I'm going to tell you.
Excellent.
So
This is a great story time.
Listen to this. They parachute in SAS soldiers.
I do know this. Yeah.
And apparently 10,000 weapons along with explosives and ammunition. The SAS arrive, and their objective, or some of their objectives, is to bring together and train the Marquis for the operation, to say specifically, we are here to stop this division of tanks in Mountbatten, or whatever, Montauban.
That's definitely not right.
Montauban, from the operation. So the day arrives, it kicks off. The Germans are like, oh shit! So they say, all right, let's.
German of
I know,
you.
just like they would, and
they send
the tanks forward, right? So the resistance start blowing up tracks, they start blowing up roads, they start blowing up train stations, they start disabling all the trains, all the vehicles in the area. Anyway, all the roads, they're just getting rid of everything, right?
I don't think anything makes me feel as patriotic as hearing stories about the SAS during World War II.
Yeah,
God, it's good, isn't it?
I tell you what, it's worthy to feel proud of the SAS, and especially after you hear the next bit I'm about to tell you. But I will say, I think we also have to give credit to the French resistance, because France gets a lot. Yes, we do.
No.
The French get a lot of shit. All right, they get a lot of shit.
Resistance were hard fuckers.
But the French resistance were fucking sick. I'm not gonna lie to you. The Marquis were nuts. They were really nuts, and they do.
Side tangent, if you don't mind me going so. So the French resistance, they were excellent. You're right, and they were hard cunts. And specifically in Paris, after they obviously deposed, they liberated Paris after D-Day. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Everyone basically pretended to be part of the resistance. People were just like, oh, no, I've been in there the entire time, you know? They had such a great reputation. Everyone wanted to be them, basically, in France after they liberated it. So they just pretended they were. They were going around doing, like, summary executions of German officers, you know, just to pretend they were part of it, because they were just so idolized by the French people.
Yeah. Well, that
and because they obviously hate the Germans.
Well, it's again, a lot of these times you're bringing in these stories or these anecdotes, and you're pretty much bang on. I'll get to one of those examples in a moment. But you're right. Essentially, they do such a good job that the Germans are infuriated. Anyway, by the 8th of June, the Germans realise that they can't use the train. So this is 2 days after, remember. This isn't... June the 6th was when the invasion happened. They need these as soon as possible. And now, apparently it's a 3-day journey. So they should be there by the 9th, 8th, and they barely move. And so they're driving up, and all the while, these guerrilla Marquis forces are just coming in, shooting at them, slowing them down to a halt, and then pissing off. And some die, some survive, they run away, but it's just slowing everything down. Now, here's where the SAS really get involved. So you're going to love this.
Oh, go on.
So,
tell it to me straight,
Joe. An SAS more SAS arrive, including Sir Tommy McPherson, or McPherson? I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly.
P-H-E-R?
P-H-E-R, yeah.
Say Pearson.
McPherson, thought so, okay. Now, this guy is proper old school, cool, like... You know, SAS. Oh, this guy is this guy's so SAS. Like, listen to this. Right?
I think they're quite a small group. So I've read books, and I think on the SAS and like them getting captured and stuff, and what they do after they're captured. And I think they mentioned Tommy McPherson a couple of times.
Yes, and
I think it's because there was so few of them at the time. I think they all kind of just knew each other and trained together. That it was
absolutely. Well, also the SAS started in World War II, right? So it was just initializing as an operation, and it just built into this. Obviously, the SAS we know now. But you're right. They talk about him because he is one of the most decorated British soldiers of World War II. He's from Edinburgh, and he joined the SAS at 19 years old, 5 years before D-Day. So he's 24 at the time of this.
North Africa.
So younger than us. 24, younger than us. This guy spends the entire war on high-risk mission after high-risk mission, like super dangerous, on the front lines, behind enemy lines, and just doing the craziest stuff. By the end of the war, the Axis come to call him the Kilted Killer. Yeah, the Kilted Killer. So listen to this.
That's like a Quentin Tarantino film come
to
life.
This is this should be a Tarantino. I mean, he's already done it in World War II.
In
a sense, he's done it. Yeah, but this would be great on its own. So anyway, listen to this. He arrives, right? He parachutes in. And he arrives in his trademark Highland battle dress. And the French initially are confused because they think someone's wife has been parachuted in. So this is what he said. This is not what I've said. He said, just as I arrived, I heard an excited young Frenchman saying to his boss, Chief, there's a French officer here and he's brought his wife. They're mistaking me for a woman wearing a skirt, and it was an easy error to make. But as a British officer parachuted into a resistant situation, your only authority was your own personality, which I had to try to reinforce with my kilt and a degree of flamboyance. I mean, fucking hell. This guy's like, I've got no one to back up.
You can't. You speed over here, said.
But he literally has to do that because no one's going to believe him. No one's going to believe him.
Let's go up and at him.
He can't just say, I'm the best of the best and I'm going to tell you what to do. He's on his own. Like, no one's going to trust that. So instead, he rocks up in a kilt and he just starts taking charge. Take me to your commanding officer now. he's like on it. He is so on it. And that's just, and apparently, so listen, it gets even better, right? So apparently,
stop it.
So mate, it's so good. So apparently, he spends the next few months living in caves and woodland areas around that South France or Middle France area, systematically blowing up any road or bridge or rail line or anything. Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm sure he finds a house or somewhere to stay the night. But the point is, he does his operations in the countryside, in the woodlands or whatever. He's systematically blowing up all this stuff to the point where apparently he's doing like at least one operation a day. And he essentially becomes a mini celebrity in Middle France because everyone knows him, everyone sees him. It's not like he's hiding. Apparently, he's just casually driving about in a black Citroen with a Union Jack flag on it. I mean, what the fuck, man? This guy does not care. He's literally just driving about with a fucking Union Jack, just going, "Hey lads, the next operation's this way."
And he's just like Flower of Scotland to himself as he drives up the road.
I can't believe it. And apparently his operations were so important and such a pain to the Nazis that they put a 300,000 franc bounty on his head. Ooh. And with the message, a bandit masquerading as a Scottish officer and extremely dangerous to the citizens of France. How brilliant is that?
I love it. I love it.
I
love SAS stories. Like what they did is, it's like some of the stories I read, they are just so unbelievable. Like the airport in North France, North Africa, where they literally create Humvees, the first ever Humvees, which are like, trucks with machine guns on it, and they just go through this airport, just blowing up planes, mowing down Germans, and like disabling aircraft. It's they just like retreat back into the mountains afterwards, like nothing happened.
Unbelievable.
It's insane. It's
some honestly, of the stories are brilliant. This is the next bit. Now this is not as exciting. This is actually quite sad, and this is kind of what you were talking about earlier. So at this point, the Nazis are becoming completely infuriated by this all. I mean, imagine just traveling up for days and just being slowed down. You know that your countrymen are dying in the north, and you can't come to save them. They're not only losing time, but they're also losing men. Like over time, they're just losing troops from side to side. Mm-hmm. One German officer has given information that there is a Marquis base in a small town nearby called Oradieu-sur-Glane. Or Glane, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. So they take the town. They find no sign of any Marquis base or anything like that. And the Germans round up the entire population of the town, which is in total 643 people. They separate the men from the women. And they take the 190 or so men into a few barns in the town centre or around the town and shoot every single one of them. 190 men just gone. They then take the women and the children and they put them into the church, the local church of the town, and they burn it. They do shoot them beforehand, but then they burn the church down. I assume because shooting men, they don't burn the barns because shooting men is whatever, it's war. They burn the church because they don't want people to know they've killed women and children. But it's pure hatred. That's the reason they're doing it. It's just there's no rhyme or reason. It actually loses them time because they're not actually moving forward with their objective. They've literally just taken a detour to kill women and children, and especially the children. I believe the number of children in that barn, there were over 200 children in that church.
Yeah, but Joe, they were just following orders.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. It's so fucked up. So that is actually the biggest massacre of French civilians in World War II.
Really?
That event. And it was because of this Der Reich division not being able to make it up to the top. Finally, they arrive in Normandy, but the first troops arrive on June 15th. So that's 9 days after the invasion has begun. It's a 3-day journey, and the very first troops are arriving on the 15th.
A week late?
They don't actually, full week, and they don't even manage to get all of them together and fight as one unit until, I think, mid-July. So that's a full month and a bit that they're not able to work because of this operation that the French resistance did and the SAS.
They're pushing through all of France.
So, I mean, how insane is that? I mean, well played to the French resistance, but it just shows how brutal war can be when there's awful stuff like that.
So obviously landings were pretty successful in the end, we'd say. I mean, I think the fact we're here today is a good testament of that.
So all these battles across these beaches are essentially with the exception of Omaha, better than they expected. And by the end of it, they have managed to establish a beachfront. They have to take the French town of Caen, but it's the British that are supposed to do it, and Monty cannot do it. It takes like a month. They're supposed to take a day, and it takes a month to take this town. And that's a really important town to take because it
connects all the beaches together, right? And it's that main kind of road going from the south to the north.
I think the road just connects everywhere, to Paris, to Germany. It's one of the big connectors. So it's a huge, vital supply route that they need to take. And it takes a while, but they do get there. But
it's funny that, the importance of roads.
When I was first into history, I did not understand how important logistics were at all. I just got the stories and the battles and the stuff. I had no idea how important it was. Supply routes, how you get troops everywhere, how you get supplies like food and ammunition everywhere. That is how you win a war.
It's nerdy to say this, but it is fascinating. I play a lot of Hearts of Iron, which is a military simulator game, and part of it is organising supply routes. And I honestly find that one of the most fun parts of it, just making sure you've got all these little railways that connect from the supply hubs and the capitals to the troops in the front line. If they don't, they're going to start dying. It's baffling, but it's a good perspective.
It's a good simulator on exactly how crucial that is, because it literally makes or breaks wars. And that's why an amphibious landing is so difficult, because if you can't establish enough for supplies to come in, what are those first troops that get on that beach supposed to do if they've run out of ammunition, they've run out of anything to attack, and they've got tanks blaring down on them? They need their own tanks, they need their own ammunition to come forward. If they're stuck on a beach or some rock and they need to stay there for a day, where's their food coming from? Where's their water coming from? Supplies are crucial to everything in war.
Not to special forces, though. Not to the paratroopers and the Marines,
who
in their training are taught, you need nothing. You'll take a couple rounds of ammunition, a few packs of food, and you'll do the objective. Get it done.
But you're exactly right. One thing we've barely talked about is paratroopers and how important they were to this operation. And in reality, that's why they get paid more, and that's why they are trained harder than the average soldier, because they are put into such a weird, horrible position where
selection as well.
You can't just get in. Well, you need to prove that you're able to do it. And I mean, from their perspective, they're jumping into Normandy in the middle of the night. They've got no. They have to find their fellow troops, and they have no supplies. They've just got what they're carrying, which is a lot. It's heavy as hell on what they're carrying, but that's it.
I think a lot of casualties, and I don't know what percentage it would have been, but I know a good few casualties were in the landings themselves were from Allied forces not wearing their life jackets properly and putting them fashionably around their waist rather than around their chest. And obviously, because they've got the massive amounts of heavy equipment and machinery on their back, as soon as they get into the water, they just turn upside down and literally just suffocating under the weight of their own equipment.
Literally, it's
drowning, even not suffocating.
It's such a brutal job to do any of these jobs, because the equipment you're carrying is so heavy, and you're only relying on yourself. Like, if things go wrong, if you're underwater, no one's coming to save you. They're all having to deal with their own lives as well. It's on you to. They're
told don't save anyone, don't help anyone, keep moving.
Yeah. It's so brutal. So, I mean, this is obviously debated, at least from the German side, but in total, for one day, the Allies took approximately 10,250 casualties on D-Day. Of that 10,250 casualties, around 4,440 were killed. On the German side, its estimates suggest, and this is not because from the Germans' perspective, they're running away at this point, so how can they tally up everyone? But their estimates suggest that 9,000 were killed, wounded, or missing from that specific day. Well, considering they're the defensive ones, you'd assume it's much less.
I feel like the estimates might be a bit wrong there.
Well, it's pretty extensively researched. I imagine at this point it's fairly on the money, but it does. It just shows how good it went, because you're right. If you're in a defensive position with, you're able to look down on this beach and shoot at people that don't have any cover, then yes, in theory, you should be getting way less casualties. But by the end of the day, the Allies have turned it
outnumbered, you're
around
encircled.
so well that they're now losing. I mean, at the start, I'm sure
They're probably in a better position as well than the panicking German
Right.
divisions trying to get into position and
with
fight
no
properly.
coordination and all that. So I imagine at the very start of the day, it would have been
tides quickly changed.
Germany would have been killing so many more Allied troops, but by the end of the day, it's completely swung around.
Paratroopers coming up behind you as well.
Oh, world caving in.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you very much. That's it for listening to our first episode, or listening or watching on D-Day. It's the Pint-Sized History podcast, and we'll be back hopefully next episode with a discussion about Stalingrad.
So have you decided on Stalingrad then? Because it's your choice now. You're the one doing it.
When I think of monumental World War II events, it's got to be D-Day and then Stalingrad as like the two. If we're going for the World War II route, Stalingrad is the ideal next location.
I'd love it if you did Stalingrad.
It's a tale of absolute horror. So maybe I won't have some lighthearted stories, but it serves as a good reminder of the cruelty of war.
It's also just super, super important and not something I know much about. I know the basics, but I really don't know that much about the ins and outs. So I'd love to know more, and I'm excited to.
As Peep Show said, 300,000 German soldiers were encircled.
That's such spoilers. What if they didn't know that? We're excited for the episode.
Obviously, during this podcast, we might be a little bit lighthearted and poke fun and maybe joke about some of the facts that happened and some of the stories we hear. But I want to stress that we have the utmost respect, admiration, and appreciation for the Allied forces during World War II and what they did. So I just want to caveat anything you might hear coming up with that.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, to be fair, some of the stuff that we talked about, like when I was researching some of this, obviously I found some really awesome stories, but there's so many sad ones as well, and I only just touched. I mean, there's so much left that you could talk about this huge subject, and some of it is super brutal. When you're reading it, it is a really harsh reminder of just how horrible it can be. So I completely agree. We're not trying to trivialize it at all.
No.
But yeah, I mean, apart from that, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. So cheers.
Bye-bye.